Good Friday morning.
Good
Where's
morning.
every
Good
Where's
morning.
everybody? Everybody got a 4th of July story to share here? Anybody do anything wild and crazy? I will share my fondest memory of 4th of July to date is I have fun with my neighborhood friends every year about it. We were like 4 doors down. Uh, they got a nice pool in the backyard and um, big house, and they love throwing parties. So they've been hosting kind of the neighborhood 4th of July party for since I moved in, I think. So I moved in 2013, so they've been doing this for about 11 years. And I would say probably like 5 years ago, we had a new addition to the party. A new neighbor had moved into the neighborhood, and younger couple, and big fireworks guy. So he goes to New Hampshire, he buys all the fireworks, and he sets them up in the front yard. And my kids are 12 and 13. So if this was 5 years ago, they're, what is that, 7 and 8. And the whole neighborhood's roughly the same age, the kids. So they set them all up in the yard, and the first one goes off, tips over, lights the other ones, and it's your classic. The fireworks are like firing at everybody. People are grabbing their babies and their kids and trying to get inside the house. If you've seen one of these like celebrate responsibly videos on TikTok or whatever, that was us. I will never forget it. I don't think my kids will forget it. And I bust that neighbor every single year. So that is my 4th of July story. I honestly thought somebody was going to die with these things. So, anybody else got a story to share? Maybe some irresponsible fireworks. They are. I can totally see why Massachusetts doesn't want you doing them, and I don't think I'll ever be near or part of any kind of home fireworks again. Who else has got something on a celebration maybe gone wrong?
Just
Anybody
irresponsible
actually?
drink.
Just irresponsible drinking. Yeah, I was curious. Maybe we don't have. Maybe this is our non-drinking crew that's joining us here on Friday. It's a little a little lighter than normal. Um, yeah, I don't know what it is, man. I had a time where you know I'd be able to like let loose a little bit more around a holiday, and I just can't even. I have one beer, and I'm like, that's just it. Okay, that's my celebration. I just can't get to that crazy state anymore. I don't know what it is. And it's like up here, I'm up at the lake house in Otis, and people at every age are still drinking all day and out on the boats. And I don't know. I've lost my ability to do it. So I guess I just think about what the next day is going to be like. So, Frankie.
Good morning. Good morning, everybody. I got a celebration gone wrong story. Anybody that knows me knows like I love my old lady way more than she loves me. So I'm constantly chasing her around the house and tickling her and doing all sorts of wild stuff. I try to stay young. Doesn't really work out. So it was Tuesday night. We were up to Roaring Brook, where her family has a campground, and I was chasing her up a little hill, and I tore my calf muscle straight down. Haven't been able to walk for 2 days now. It's just terrible, terrible thing, but still had a great time. It was a good fourth, and you know, celebration gone wrong right
That's
there.
the celebration gone wrong.
I went to the walk-in without having a blown off finger from fireworks. They were amazed that I walked in there or that I got in there, and it wasn't a firework related incident. So that's my story.
Unbelievable. There you go. Who else has got one? We'll finish up with one more before we get into. I've just got some light stuff for you today. I had prepared I've got a great topic for Monday that I'm excited to share with everybody today, and maybe just keep it on the lighter side. So I got some, you guys still hear me? Look like I lost my connection there. Thumbs up. Somebody put a hand up, something. We're good. Okay. All right. Well, let me, I used our old chat GPT to, I said, you know what, give me 20 fun facts about America's Independence Day. And it is crazy that this is, this big national holiday. I don't think I knew many of these on the list. So I'm going to share with you guys some interesting Independence Day facts. So first of all, the full, they voted on the independence on July 2nd. And that was what John Adams believed was going to be the day that gets celebrated. So July 4th didn't even represent a day where everybody had actually signed. Everybody doesn't sign until August 2nd. So I wasn't able to find exactly why the 4th is the day that ends up sticking. But they vote on July 2nd. Everybody finalizes the signatures on August 2nd. And then the 4th becomes the day. I'm assuming they had a significant amount of signatures on the 4th, but I couldn't actually find the final stat. Does anybody know that stat off the top of their head? Do we have any history buffs on why it's the 4th? All right. So regarding the fireworks, they've been part of celebrations since the first anniversary, 1777, symbolized the rockets fired during the Revolutionary War. We consume about 150 million hot dogs on the 4th. It's crazy. Obviously, we've got the famous Nathan's hot dog eating contest. I don't know if anybody was aware of what happened this year. Anybody know what happened in the hot dog eating contest? The big kind of controversy. So the number one guy, I don't know how many times he's won. He's won, I don't know, like over 10 times. Took a sponsorship from a competing brand, and so they wouldn't let him compete in the hot dog eating contest. So that guy Kobayashi, who typically wins this hot dog eating contest, had to take but they didn't let him participate. So everybody was up in arms about the hot dog eating contest. They don't make this a legal holiday until 1870. It didn't become paid until 1938. The Liberty Bell in Philadelphia is tapped 13 times every Independence Day in honor of the original 13 colonies. Oldest 4th of July parade is right here in Bristol, Rhode Island, started in 1785. This next one's crazy. So Thomas Jefferson and John Adams, who both signed the Declaration of Independence, died on July 4th, 1826, 50 years later. Apparently they had like a political rivalry. They reunite as friends later in their life, and they both die on July 4th, 1826, 50 years later, which is just crazy. Most of the fireworks set off on the 4th are imported from China, in case you were wondering. American flag. Anybody know who created the American flag? Jeff and Linda?
Was it Betsy Ross?
So it says the design of the current flag was actually created by a high school student, Robert G. Heft, in 1958. So I think Betsy Ross may have created the initial, but the current is by a high school student. This is all fact checked. ChatGPT, then fact checked by Perplexity, so should be right. Yeah. Who's got something on that one? Somebody trying to chime in? The Declaration of Independence, the original, is actually housed in the National Archives in DC. What else do we have here? The bald eagle was chosen as the national bird in 1782. much to the dismay of Benjamin Franklin, who preferred the turkey. What else did I find here that was kind of interesting? Despite the fun, on average, 10,000 injuries per year related to fireworks in the U.S. because of July 4th. 10,000 injuries. The smallest parade, the world's shortest parade, happens in Aptos, California. Spans just 2 blocks. Our astronauts have been able to celebrate in space. Apparently, you can see the fireworks from space. Presidents Calvin Coolidge and Malia Obama, daughter of President Barack Obama, were both born on July 4th. I think that was all I had. Anybody else have a interesting 4th of July fact? Thought we'd keep it a little light today. We should know our national heritage here, so figured I'd share some stuff there, and we'll turn it over to some real estate. I think holidays for me are interesting because I kind of had it as a feather in my cap that I put together a real estate transaction, meaning I got a signed offer on every major holiday that we have. So it was like this weird thing that I started, I think I put like one together on Christmas, and then I put like one together on Easter. So I'm like, all right, I wanted to start actually tracking this in my weird head. So I got every paid holiday, wrote them down, and started to track if I could put a deal together on every single day. And I was able to accomplish this. This is a weird fact about my real estate transactions. So did anybody put a deal together on the 4th? Get a signed offer? You'd think like people are just off and about, but I've shown houses on every major holiday, and I've got signed contracts on every major holiday. Anybody put one together over the holiday? How about show of hands? Who showed yesterday? Who showed a house yesterday? Yeah, so people are just, yeah, they don't care that it's the 4th of July. Quite a few showings yesterday. All right, who's got something going on in a transaction that'd be a unique share for the group? Frankie, I'm assuming your hand is still up from your story.
My bad.
It's all right. Nobody's got something going on? I'll throw something out there that's kind of come across the chat channels is what you can and can't do with a pocket listing, right? So we hear this term a lot, and one of our agents was questioning something that another agent was doing. So there's a couple of different things to kind of consider when you're talking about in theory, what a pocket listing is. So when you get a contract signed, there's a couple of different options besides just bringing this property to market and put it in the MLS. The first is a delayed listing. So in theory, this is a property that should not be being shown. You've talked to them, you know they want to sell it, so we're going to get a signed contract, but they're not ready to start marketing and opening up to the public. So we are going to delay the listing for whatever period of time. I think the different MLSs have different rules around this. But we shouldn't be taking offers. We shouldn't be showing the property. It's signed, but it's not available to be shown, marketed, etc. So that's the first thing, is just a delayed listing. We have a signed contract. We're not ready to bring it to market. We got to get the staging right. We got to make some repairs first, whatever the case might be. The second thing would be a non-MLS. And this is more of what I would think of when you hear that term pocket listing, a non-MLS. So there are certain scenarios where somebody says to you, hey, look, I don't want this all over the internet. I don't want a sign in my yard. I'm a private person. I want this thing sold. right? So put it out to your network, start talking to people, but I don't, want the general public to know that this property is for sale. If we're going to do a non-MLS though, we got to allow showings. And so this was we had a property listed in a town with a sign with a coming. One of our buyers has been eyeing for going on a month now. So they've been marketing this property. It's not coming soon in the MLS or anything. And every MLS also has like different rules around the coming soon stuff. But yeah, it's definitely a difference between non-MLS coming soon, right? Where it's saying, hey, look, we are publicly putting this out there. And every MLS, I don't know, maybe it's 7 days, maybe it's up to 14 days where you could have it in this coming soon status, but you'd have a date at which it's going to be coming to the market. And then you've got this non-MLS, which is we're not going to market it everywhere, but it is fully for sale. We should be able to show the property, write offers, get it accepted, etc. So anybody have any weird things going on around coming soon, a delayed listing, a non-MLS? Do we understand the differences? Does somebody want to put a clarification out there on, hey, I saw this and it was weird? And Heath.
Yeah, it's funny you brought that up.
We can't hear you. No, that was better.
Okay. It's funny that you brought that up because I was literally just at a listing appointment where the guy wanted to go non-MLS, and I do know how to sell it, but I also don't know how to sell it, to be completely honest with you. He just doesn't want his tenant to know that he's selling the property. And he wants to get kind of like a accepted offer on it to give her a 90-day notice and basically close as soon as she moves out of the property. But she doesn't want her to know that he's selling, and he doesn't want people to go in and out of the house. So he wants it to be non-MLS and sight unseen. So I am just, I'm at a loss for words because I told him, like, you realize if you go non-MLS and if you go sight unseen, you're probably going to lose out on quite a chunk of money. And yeah.
Yeah, we can. We couldn't for a minute.
Yeah, you can. You guys hear me? Okay. Yeah.
I haven't been able to.
So, Lohith, very difficult situation to deal with. I have yet to come across a scenario where I thought a seller could benefit from a non-MLS, right? I mean, to me, maybe somebody that's like in law enforcement or something that is, or some sort of a federal agent or special forces or like that, I could kind of see where maybe you don't want everybody to know, or you've got some weird occupation that you wouldn't want people coming into your house, or you're more of a private person. I can see it. The other thing I can see is like a celebrity or something that doesn't want this to kind of be out there. You get some divorce situations where maybe they don't, you don't want your neighbors to know or something. But I personally just haven't had a scenario where I'm meeting where they tell me about non-MLS and they think they want to go on non-MLS. But when I really explain what's going to happen if we truly go non-MLS, we end up fully marketing the property. And that's kind of what I would recommend here, because you've got somebody trying to avoid the tenant finding out. But the reality is, unless you want to take significantly less, like you said, to get somebody to just buy this property without looking at it and get market value is going to be, even in a seller's market like we're in, it's going to be extremely difficult. And at some point, this tenant's going to have to find out, right? So I've always felt, hey, look, I can understand where you want to keep this private. You don't want your tenant to know. My experience in selling multifamilies is we should just be upfront, Because the reality is, if this property changes hands without them moving out, right, to find that buyer that's willing to do that and take on full risk of whatever tenants in there, whatever situation, pretty rare. And you're going to have to give up, 20, 30% of market value to find a buyer that's going to be willing to do that. So if they're willing to do that, if you're willing to give up 20 to 30% of market value to find a buyer that's going to buy this thing sight unseen and just deal with whatever, then yeah, we don't have to tell the tenant. It's going to be pretty, most sellers are not going to want to take it at that much of a loss. So, Margareta.
Yeah, the other problem with tenants, I've spent some time in housing courts, unfortunately. And with tenants, you got the problem that if they didn't give enough notice, they might say, we're not moving, we were not properly. And, this is Massachusetts, so I'm assuming this home is in Mass. You might have another problem with tenants when they might just live there for longer than you want. So another notice about tenants.
Yeah, and that's why the value is not going to be there, right? Because an experienced investor that might be, and that's, I think, the only person that's going to be willing to do this. Your first time investor is not going to buy a house that they can't inspect and understand the tenant situation. So you're going to have an experienced investor, and an experienced investor knows, hey, when I buy this, I need to get it at a good deal because I might not get this tenant out for 12 to 24 months. So that means no rent potentially for 12 to 24 months. And also I got to factor in the fact that not only might I not get my rent, but they might destroy my property because we're putting them through this stressful situation, right? So those are some of the things that the experienced investor is going to take into consideration when making their offer. So.
Yeah, I mean, I explained that like he's going to take a significant loss, and I don't know what he wants to do. So I guess I'll see. I feel like I could get it sold on some basis.
The other issue is how do you find all these experienced investors that might be willing to even make the offer for 20 to 30% less, right? Because in theory, when you go non-MLS, what you're really counting on your agent to do is individually call all the agents in that marketplace, which there are thousands, call all the agents, see if they have a potential buyer, right? That's how we're going to potentially put a deal together. So it's going to be a ton of work on your end of literally going through the MLS and just calling every agent. Hey, I've got a property, 123 Main Street. Here's the situation. Do you have anybody? Hey, you got a property. That's what we got to do.
Yeah, I'll have a second discussion with him to see where his head's at, and see how he wants to proceed. But yeah, that's why I brought it up. I genuinely don't know how to get it sold if it's not in the MLS. So,
anybody done a non-MLS successfully?
I had one under contract that never went to the closing table.
Okay. How'd you find that buyer, Lohith?
Pretty much what you said, just calling around all the brokers.
Yeah. Anybody else have a story to share around a non-MLS listing? Even if you were on the buy side? Tracy?
Yeah, I've actually done a couple of these, but for different reasons. Like one of them, the seller already knew who she wanted to sell it to. Well, actually, both of them, they both knew who they wanted to sell it to. They didn't want MLS. They didn't want anybody else coming through. They just wanted to have me handle the transaction for them. And it was dual. It ended up being a dual agency on both sides, on both deals.
Yep. So Jen's just putting in the comments. He doesn't have to have a for sale sign. Yeah, I mean, typically these guys that want to go non-MLS, they don't want to sign. They don't want any MLS. They don't want any marketing done. They just are expecting you to like do old school networking and try and find a buyer. So, and Jen's comment, you can just show the one side of the house because this was a 2-family. I've heard of these guys, and I don't know what your situation is, Lohith, where they don't even want showings to happen because they're nervous that the tenant's going to find out. Right. And so the other issue that we run into is you're going to need a cash buyer, because if they don't want anybody coming into the house, now we can't even get an appraiser in there. We're going to need an appraisal for a mortgage situation. Right. So you got to have that conversation with them. Hey, we got to find cash, or, you're going to have to be okay with us telling this tenant something to get this appraiser in there. We didn't touch on that in the first piece. So who else has got just a story or something to share around non-MLS? Something that we haven't touched on. Steph and Linda?
I don't have a story so much as a question, and that is this: why is the seller so afraid of this tenant that he's willing to, take such a hit on his property? I think that might be a valid question. Like, if you can discuss with him to get to the root of understanding what his extreme fear is of this tenant, that might help to shift or to open his mind to other possibilities that would be more beneficial to him. So, I mean, to me, in listening to this story, everything's just screaming to me, what is the deal with this tenant that he's so afraid of her?
I think she's a family member who's living inside the property, and his words exactly, he's afraid that she's going to act up.
Well, but you know what? She's gonna act up the
Yeah.
minute she hears. And if she has more notice so that she can have time to plan where she's going next, rather than putting her in an extreme bind at the last minute, that, having an honest and fair conversation seems like it might be a more reasonable approach for all.
Yeah, I'll just have a couple more conversations with him, to be honest with you, because, I don't think it would be feasible even for me to even try to get this thing sold to a cash buyer, non-MLS, sight unseen. I mean, that just sounds like a couple things that are never going to happen.
Well, right. And again, I think that if on the personal side, I mean, I think you really need to dig in with this guy so he can be thinking and sort of walking through his own thoughts on this. It might help to turn the scenario if you can have let him try to walk through asking questions about, okay, so what is the worst case scenario if she is aware of this in advance? What is the worst thing that can happen? And what is the worst thing that could happen if you try to do it behind her back? And maybe there's a financial reason why he's feeling like he needs to sell this. And so if you can try to ask him some questions to kind of assuage whatever anxiety he's built up in his brain about that like some catastrophic outcome that he's trying to dodge her and willing to take all this loss of money. Do you know what I mean? Just trying to reasonably to talk him kind of down about this scenario might be beneficial on your second go round with him. And then Jeffrey would like to add something. Excuse me.
Yeah. The other part too is, would he rather have a problem with her while under contract and have to fight that with a deadline, or be able to have the time to talk about it with her now, even if the tenant explodes, now, at least have time to work it out before you get to contract, and give them some notice so that they can prepare properly for it.
Yeah, he wants to give them a 90-day notice. So to be honest with you, I don't know what's going through this guy's head. I'll have another chat with him and see what's kind of going on.
Yeah, I think trying to get to his whys and his concerns might help him to think differently about how best to approach this in a way that would be more win-win. I mean, this is going to be a family member even after the transaction. So moving forward, how does he want that relationship to play out? And being honest about what's happening and giving that tenant more time to make her next plans. It all just sounds much more reasonable for everybody involved.
Justin, I see your hand. I'll let you go next. I did want to add one thing. My typical experience on the multis is they don't want to tell the tenants for fear of the tenant's going to stop paying, or the tenant's going to move out and now I'm going to lose rents. The reality is the reality is you're going to take so much less for the property than what you might lose of them moving out or them stopping paying now.
Exactly. And that's
Yeah.
then that's a conversation. Let's look at, okay, if she decides to stop paying, you know, you might lose this bit of income, but if you have to take 20 or 30% off the purchase price, you know, how is that, you know, let's look at those numbers and what makes more sense.
Yep. I think
Yeah.
that's when it typically, the seller typically goes, all right, let's just tell the tenant, you know.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So
Justin.
all good conversations.
So one, I guess, suggestion I can make, I have something kind of similar, but I don't know that the tenant's necessarily difficult. I've got a buyer, they're looking to buy in Florida, and it's going to be a 1031. So they've got that one to sell. They're under contract. The tenant's been great, but they've had that tenant there for years and years. So their rents are pretty low. So when they know that when they move on to the next place, they're going to have to pay quite a bit. And my buyers were worried that they would upset them by kind of pulling the rug out from under them. So what I suggested was doing like some kind of an offer, because a lot of the time I feel like why they get so upset, even if you give them, you know, a huge notice, is because it's a huge financial bind to them. Anywhere you have to go, obviously they're renting now, they're most likely going to end up renting at the next place. And they've got to come up with an arm and a leg. You've got, like, you know, in some cases, first month's rent, last month's rent, deposits, application fees. And there's a lot that kind of adds up. So what I suggested was that my buyers who are, you know, sellers up there, they're offering to pay at least for the down payment or security deposit, or like, you know, 2 months rent or something like that. I don't know what they ended up working out, but when they approached their tenant, they did this as a way to you know, make it a little bit more enticing and say, hey, if nothing else, it's recognizing we're putting you in a bind. So this is our way of helping to make you make that transition to the next step a little easier. So it ended up working great. The tenant's happy. My clients are a couple extra thousand out of pocket. But again, obviously it makes a difference if they have those funds to play with, like with the proceeds and everything. But just a suggestion.
Yeah, that's
a
actually a great point. I think I'm just going to bring up saying, hey, you should probably just pay the tenant like 10 grand and get that 10, 20, 30% more for your property, doing it the actual way.
Yeah. And Lohit, on this one, what's the price of the property?
It's 450, and it's relatively low for the condition of the property, and it's in Brockton, right? But it's low for the condition of the property because the property is pretty well maintained, and the basement can also be converted into a in-law suite and made into a 2-family. It's currently a single family, and he wants to liquidate this property and then move to Vegas is his big plan. And he just he's a trucker, so he's going all the way to California and then a couple of different other states, and then eventually coming back to Massachusetts. And he kind of wanted everything to be all set and done, you know, offer received, everything like that by the time he's back. So yeah, it's a weird situation.
If you conservatively just say you're non-MLS, you're going to take a 20% hit on this property. You're talking $90,000. You can do a lot with $10,000 to help this tenant out, right? So, hey, let's just be upfront with this tenant. Hey, I understand I'm inconveniencing. Here's what I would like to do. I'm going to give you all of this money, right? Help you to get to that next place, like Shaston's suggesting. And then he's still, even if it was $10,000, you know, in theory, he should be plus $80,000 if my numbers are correct, and I think they are. You know, a sight unseen, non-MLS. I think you got to be taking at least a 20% hit to do this. So
yeah, I'm gonna give him a call right after this. To be honest with you, I was just I met him for the first time yesterday, and I was just kind of, you know, following along, or the day before, and I was just kind of following along. But I should really think it through and just have a discussion with him, because I think it's something that we can just pull on the MLS.
Yep. Cool. Yeah, and that, you know, that's the beauty of what we're trying to do on this call, right? Bring this scenario. Hey, this is what I got. Give me your thoughts. And now you go back to the seller and say, hey, you know what? I talked to some of my colleagues. You know, here's a couple of points that I want to make sure we're very clear on. Here's a couple of, you know, scenarios that we ran on, you know, amongst ourselves. And what do you want to do? So, Jen, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, maybe rather than offering the money up front, if he could talk to the tenant, it sounds like it's a troublemaker tenant. So, even if it's family or not paying or something, maybe he could arrange almost like a commission. If I get this much for the house, then I'm going to give you this much. If I get even more, I'm going to give you this much. You know what I mean? To kind of, make the tenant want to present the home, want to accept showings because there's motivation there for them to make more money.
An interesting take.
That's a
because
very
it's,
good idea.
yeah, because I'm telling you, these tenants that are making it difficult to show the property, et cetera, if they're disgruntled, you're going to lose money on that offer when you've got a disgruntled tenant in there. So, and it could be, you've got this long-term family member who, just maybe there was some other arrangement or he had said something and now things have changed. Where you say, hey, look, I know we had this kind of agreement, but here's what I'm thinking. Let's get this thing sold. We'll both benefit and we can move on. So great suggestion, Jen. Margaretta.
It's also a question, maybe this is where you show your value as a realtor that like, hey, I know how to talk to this tenant. If this guy is obviously having issues with it, you need to find the right angle to approach the tenant and maybe figure out what's the best way to do it. So there's got to be a little bit of a strategy around that. And if this guy obviously doesn't know how to do it, then you need to either put yourself in that position, say, hey, I'm willing to handle this and deal with it. That's my value to this transaction. And of course, I made you an offer. 200, I'll take it.
Well, Lohith, we'll look forward to an update on this, on what ends up happening, what you guys agree with or come up with, and it'll be interesting to see how he decides to handle this tenant. So excited for an update on this one. Go enjoy your weekends, everybody, and we will talk to you all again on Monday morning. Take care.
Thank you. Have a great weekend.
Bye, guys.